Hey, good morning, everyone. This is People of Substance by LemonSkies. I'm Olga, and my guest today is Natalie Harvey. She's a strategist with Heller Consulting. Heller helps nonprofits manage through change, implement technology. They're your technology partner, essentially. So, Natalie, please say hi.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you got my memo about we wear white shirts.
Yes.
So, so your background, you spent time in nonprofits. You worked for the Public Land Trust in New York. You worked for Nature Conservancy. So you have some pretty heavy nonprofit background. How did you get into the technology side of things?
So I feel like I've always had a really strong connection to mission-driven organizations. I often found myself drawn to roles that centered around impactful work that had an
Mhm.
intersection with technology. So I actually started my career in the environmental field
Mhm.
all the way back when I was in high school. I worked for a cultural institution in Park called Wave Hill, which is an environmental organization in Park. And I was actually doing ecological restoration and urban ecology in the Bronx there. And so that really sparked my interest in the environment. And after college, I actually ended up working at the Nature Conservancy, interning for their marketing department. And that kind of just led to a number of other opportunities in the marketing and communication space in the nonprofit space. So I really transitioned into that ability to work within that sector. And so when you're in the nonprofit space, as many folks know, you end up wearing a number of hats. So I got to really learn about content creation, email marketing, but also digital strategy. And so a lot of those roles ended up being accidental admin roles. And so I needed to kind of incorporate all of that various experience. And I just found that I loved working with nonprofits. And after having a number of different roles in that digital strategy space, was really drawn to Heller for their ability to work with so many great nonprofits on so many exciting projects. So it's really been fun to transform some folks' ideas of digital strategy and work within the technology ecosystem.
So let me ask you this. I mean, obviously, we're all reading articles about artificial intelligence. We've all been dabbling with ChatGPT. But what are perhaps less photogenic, less visible nonprofit trends that you're observing with how nonprofits approach technology? What are they leaning into?
I think that a few years ago in this space, folks were just looking for a solution that would help. So they weren't looking holistically at their technology stack, their ecosystem, the folks that need to work within that, how that data is intersecting. And I think now when we're working with nonprofits, we're seeing that shift. Folks
Mhm.
are thinking more about how they can be a little bit more efficient. And oftentimes that comes with what's within their overall technology stack.
So focusing on technology, not just for what it does, but how it facilitates the work of the employees.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Um, you're very agnostic as far as technology goes. I know you have some certifications in Salesforce, but you work with all tools, all technologies, all platforms. The two big ones, obviously, are Salesforce, been around nonprofit space for a while. Microsoft entered a little bit more recently the nonprofit dedicated products. Um, are there major differences in philosophies of how the two approach? Like, is there something, or is it just really, Coke and Pepsi?
Our team discusses this a lot, actually, probably weekly, and how we could best support nonprofits to make a decision around their CRM because we know it's a huge investment of time and money. And it can also drastically transform how organizations are sharing their information and working internally and delivering on their mission. And so for larger nonprofits, we do see well, do I go with Salesforce or do I go with Microsoft? And oftentimes it's based on their overall technology ecosystem, right? So what products are they using? what are they kind of committed to using?
Mhm.
What features do those teams use and need the most? And kind of also their team's ability to administer those systems long term. So similarly, they're large platforms that have like they're highly customizable and highly scalable. So they could really do whatever you need them to do. I think some of the differences there is that Salesforce has been on the market longer. So they might have some more apps that can plug into that, but Microsoft is quickly catching up. And oftentimes it depends, are folks like a Microsoft shop already? Because then they'll be more easily able to support that system long term. So it's weighing the options of each individual nonprofit. I think folks in the nonprofit space know that each nonprofit has their own quirks and their character that will lead them down one path or the other. And so we love supporting folks in that decision.
I love that you mentioned the people piece. So it's not just looking at which tools do you currently have commitment to that play nicely with the system, but it's also looking at your skill set, which I imagine aligns with technologies you're using. So that's the people focus there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if you're continuing to invest in a system, you also want to make sure that your staff is comfortable with it and that folks are going to use it and that they're comfortable using it. And so that plays a huge piece in some of the decisions that we make with our clients.
I've definitely been reading, and there's been a lot of discussions about the change piece related to technology. So you can configure the tools, you can plug them in, if you will, but if people are not embracing it, it's not a success, is it?
It's absolutely not. And I think one of the things that we include in all of our projects is that idea of change management and making sure that folks understand what the change will be for them, how it can improve their work, how it might change some of the workflows that they're doing. They might have to adjust some of the things that they're doing, their terminology. For some folks, they're moving from very old systems and it's like moving to a whole new city. So you want to make sure that you're finding your new coffee shop and that you have a new grocery store. And that's kind of what a change in a CRM is. And so just making sure people feel comfortable. There will be resistance. There will be challenges. I mean, especially if you're migrating a large amount of data, that's a challenge in itself. And so just making sure folks are along for the ride and clear that this change is happening and how it will impact them.
I appreciate you mentioning finding the coffee shop in the new city because you clearly know your audience here. I travel, once I've identified my home base, where to grab coffee in the morning, I'm settled in. So let's talk a little bit about myth in technology and space. I mean, kind of the most blatant one. If you have, you blame technology for things that are not working, and if something is broken, it's technology's fault. But what are some other myths that you encounter frequently, or maybe just misunderstandings of the what and the how?
Yeah, I think that since a lot of folks are investing in a big change often, especially if they're moving to a CRM, or maybe even if it's a new marketing platform or event solution, it's a huge investment for them. So especially with a CRM tool like a Salesforce or a Microsoft, I think folks expect it to do everything. And no solution is really one size fits all. And it also takes constant work to administer, to ensure your data is up to date, to make sure folks know about new features that are coming out. So you really want to look for a system that just plays nicely with all your other tools. Like, are you often using an online donation tool? How would that work with your new solution? Or maybe it's even incorporating something like a data warehouse so that you could access and report on data more efficiently rather than having all of that information, maybe like 20 years of information in your CRM. So just kind of thinking outside of the box a little bit and making sure that you're not expecting one thing to do everything for you.
Well, and what you alluded to, once implementation is done, it's not really done.
It's never done. Your data governance you need to make sure folks understand where to put data, how they're inputting that data, what data is most important to them. So I think one of the buzzwords is a 360-degree view of what your constituent is doing. But your organization needs to decide what that looks like for them. Maybe it's not the same for every single organization. And so making sure that's clear and defined and folks know that, and then also revisiting your data every once in a while and making sure folks are inputting that information so that you can best showcase how all of this data is impacting your mission.
So it's almost educating leadership and volunteer boards that there's no such thing as completion. You sort of get to a milestone, but you shouldn't be in stasis. You're continuing to develop, you're continuing to evolve.
Yeah, it's like anything else, right? It's like if you exercise, you're never done exercising. For most of us, I think we're lifelong learners. You're always learning. Yeah. And so technology is always evolving as well. And you don't want to be stuck in one place with all of your information.
There is a philosophical shift in how we approach data. I think more was more for quite some time. And then suddenly we realized, wait a minute, my preference for dog food brand probably has nothing to do with my, probably has nothing to do with how much I may contribute, right? What it may have to do with is, should you include a dog or a cat in my solicitation?
Yes, and who doesn't love dogs or cats? Yeah, absolutely. I think that making sure that especially when you're starting out with something new, that you're not trying to just recreate everything that you had, and being really thoughtful about what best serves you and your constituents, because it can very easily get overwhelming if you're looking at one page and you've got 100 fields. Yeah. Then you just don't really want to fill anything out, and then you don't have clean, helpful data. And so making sure that you're just thoughtful about what your long-term goals are, what you're reporting on, how you're reporting on it will really help make sure that you can better administer and keep that system healthy for a longer amount of time.
That it's actionable. I want to ask you a question about the people and processes part of technology. You alluded to some of it earlier. But sometimes the issue is not, scrap the old systems or, get a new one. Sometimes the issue falls into how we use tools. Is that something you see frequently?
Yeah, I think we have seen that in the past. Folks just want to make sure. Sometimes they're looking at a solution selection. So they're looking at a number of different solutions for something they have already. Maybe it is a CRM, maybe it's an events tool or marketing tool. And they just want to make sure they're using the right tool for them. And I think that's a really smart effort because you're just making sure that whatever system you're using and however you're using it best serves you and the people that are using it. And so I think that's a great thing for folks to consider. It's also really good because you're planning ahead, right? You're thinking, will this work for us 5 years down the line? If we do want to grow maybe our programs or our fundraising revenue, how do our current systems align with that? And so that's really great. And also making sure you have the time to dedicate to that. Like if you know that you have staff that can support that effort, have a point person that's trusted within your organization to kind of support staff along that journey, that'll really help with the adoption of that existing tool, or maybe if you find a new one, then someone to kind of champion that existing tool or new tool.
I think of it as, sometimes something is not working, but it's sort of like, well, maybe start by reading the manual before throwing the item away and getting a new one. So it may be a user error.
Yeah, or it could be how the current system's even configured, right? Yeah. So maybe it was configured 5 years ago, and what you're doing now is different. Yeah. And so you can just really spend money investing in what you have, rather than maybe building a whole custom system that then gets very complicated and challenging to keep on long term. So it's just investing in that, maybe even the staff time for someone to learn and do that. Yeah. Updated configuration.
Yeah, that makes sense. So here's a question that I've been really looking forward to asking you. What are some really exciting examples of innovation that you're seeing among nonprofits?
I personally feel like nonprofits are more deeply invested in supporting people and causes and attempting to incorporate that into their solutions. They're probably starting to ask more questions about inclusivity, accessibility, and tailoring their
Mhm.
solutions to their audience than other markets are. I got the chance to come in on the project at a later stage, but we were working with a client that was looking at segmentation. They were doing mailings, direct mailings, email marketing, and they had like a custom solution that was at end of life. And some of the Heller folks helped them identify customer data platforms, so CDPs, as a way to do advanced segmentation. So it kind of puts everything multi-channel, and it consumes and it unifies and it organizes your data. And then it's from all of these sources. And then in real time, it does this very advanced segmentation. So that was something that I hadn't personally seen before, that I was excited to see happening in the nonprofit space, because I feel like a lot of folks are trying to market, they're trying to segment their audience, and it's challenging to do in some smaller marketing tools if you don't have marketing automation. And so that just seemed like at the forefront of some of the things folks are doing.
So it's not necessarily the bells and the whistles, but it's just a very thoughtful approach and really kind of doing the most with what you have.
Yeah, it was thoughtful, but there are a lot of bells and whistles, right? So some
Okay.
of these tools have AI that will then create these journeys and then build new journeys and look at how your customers are engaging, and then maybe letting you know how the next best marketing engagement might be. So
it's almost predictive,
yes.
based on my history. If you send me this, I will sign up to volunteer or I will contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, these things are very complex, and I think what's really both exciting and frightening to nonprofit leadership, it requires a whole new set of skills that, you know, they're much more deeper trained individuals. It's not something that you just pick up on the job on day one.
Yeah, I think that that's probably true. But I think in my experience, a lot of folks in the nonprofit space are very eager to learn.
Yes.
And everyone's kind of learning these new
Yeah.
tools as it goes, since technology is moving so fast. It's just like, oh, I've just got to learn. I've got to keep up. And so I think that if you're making that investment, then you should invest in your staff. But then also a lot of times our projects, when these are implemented, come along with documentation
Yep.
or support. So a lot of vendors will assist if there's a question or a need for a change.
Well, and I love that emphasis on constant growth. Again, it's sort of, as technology is never completed, your learning process is never completed. You're always, the second you stop, you become obsolete.
Yes.
I probably said it more bluntly than you might do. So let's shift gears for a second. I know, in addition to your nonprofit work with various organizations, you're involved in personal level in volunteering and environment and land conservation and forestry. Those are some of the areas you've mentioned to me before. Can you talk a little bit about your volunteer kind of involvement outside of work?
Yeah. So I think you mentioned environmental stewardship in parks. I do like to do continued environmental stewardship locally with parks. So it's usually weeding or gardening, which I quite enjoy. And then I have also done some marathons with Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and half marathons. So fundraising for that cause specifically. I have some dear friends that are survivors. So that's a really great way that I like to just give back, but also have some fun, if people consider long distance running fun.
I do personally, but So I just want to be also clear that when you talk about land conservation and weeding and gardening, you're not offering that up to others. That's what you do for, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I do it at home and I do it with parks. I don't know how much more I would do
You can
for
take
someone.
up. I'm just asking for a friend here. Um,
The work is never done.
no, no. That's like a theme of our conversation. It's never done, right? Like implementation is never done, learning is never done, the weeding is never done.
Mhm.
Um, So, to kind of wrap up our conversation, we play a little game, Two Truth and a Lie. And I've met you before, but I don't know you that well. So, I'm a little nervous about spotting your fibs. So, if you can share with me three factoids, two of them truthful and one perhaps outside of what's real, I will try to guess which one is your lie.
Okay. I ate pizza every day after school as a child.
Hmm.
I am a certified personal trainer and I have a 30-pound cat named Gus.
So the cat piece is very specific, so I want to say it's true, but I also have teenagers, so the pizza thing actually does ring true for me. I'm gonna say the pizza is true, and you are pretty sporty. You've mentioned running, so I'm gonna go with the first two being truthful. You probably have a cat, but I'm guessing it's either not 30 pounds, and his name is not Gus, is it?
Yeah, you got me. I've
Okay.
got a 15-pound dog.
See, okay. Is his name Gus?
No, her name is Wicket.
Okay. See, I'm getting really good at this. But yeah, the pizza, I'm like, yeah, no. In our household, it's nuggets usually, but it's the same idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in New York City, and so after school every day, my grandfather would get me a slice of pizza, which is a very fond memory, and I still wish it was true. Probably not better for my health at this point, but
Well, if it's just one slice, you figure there's some dairy, there's some crust.
yeah, everyone needs some carbs.
Natalie, thank you so much for being on here. You're a wonderful guest, and I just really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Olga. It's been great chatting with you.
See you soon.